Hello, so we're back on chapter 50 in Children of Blood and Bone. We're in Enon's perspective here. The ground before me is a maze, a labyrinth of masks and earthly animations. I sprint through the chaos, dodging blades, leaping over tree roots to make it through the gate. More masked figures run out, confused, attempting to make sense of the insanity. Zelly's animations break through the ground like rising mountains. They swarm like an infestation, a plague no one can escape. It's working. Despite myself, a smile comes as I sprint. It's a whole new world of battle. A game of Senate more chaotic than anything I could have imagined. All around me, fighters go down, screaming as Zelly's animations grab hold. Like cocoons, the earthly soldiers wrap themselves around the assailants, pinning the assailants to the ground. For the first time, the sight of magic is thrilling. Not a curse, but a gift. A fighter lunges toward me, and I don't even have to reach for my blade. An animation crashes into him, knocking him out of my way. As I leap over the fallen fighter, the earthly animation looks up. Though it has no visible eyes, I can sense its gaze. A chill runs through me as I near the gate. Ugh! The cry is distant, yet it seems in my head. The smell of the sea wavers. I turn. An arrow's pierced Zelly's arm. Zelly! Another arrow flies, this time striking her side. The impact knocks her to the ground. New animations rise to take the arrows head on. Go! She shouts from down the field, finding me in the frenzy. She keeps one hand gripped on the sunstone as the other staunches the wound in her side. My feet drag like cement, but I can't ignore her instruction. The gate is only a few meters away. Our family and the scroll are still inside. I push forward, making it through the gate and toward the camp, but before I can move on, a different sight gives me pause. A diviner with a powerful frame races out the gate. Blood stains his hand and face. For some reason, the sight makes me think of Dezane. But most troubling of all is the smell of smoke and ash. It overpowers me as he runs past. I don't understand why until I whip my head around and see the diviner's hands begin to blaze. A burner. The sight stops me in my tracks, reigniting a fear Father's pounded into me my whole life. The type of magi that incinerated Father's first family, the monsters who set him on his warpath. An indomitable fire rages around the magi's hands, billowing in shocking red clouds. Its flames shine bright against the night, cracking so loud it practically roars. As it floods my ears, the sound twists into screams, the futile pleas Father's family must have made. A new wave of arrow launches from the trees with the burner's arrival, forcing Zelly back. It's too much to handle at once. The sunstone slips from her grasp. No! The world shifts, time freezing as the forthcoming horror dawns. The burner lunges for the orb. This must have been his plan all along. Zelly stretches for the stone, pain face illuminated by the blaze in the burner's hand, but her reach falls short. The burner's fingers barely graze the stone when his body erupts in flames. The fire burns inside his chest, shooting from his throat, his hands, his feet. Curse the skies, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. The blaze is all-consuming. The air incinerates to a scalding degree. The ground beneath the burner's feet smolders red. Just his presence melts the dirt around him like metal in a blacksmith's forge. My feet move before my mind catches up. I sprint through the mammoth tree and paralyzed masks in my way. I have no plan, no viable attack, but still I run. As I race to get there in time, the burner holds his flaming hands in front of my face. Through the fire, he almost looks confused, unsure of what to do. But as his fists clench, darkness radiates from his stance. A new strength, a rediscovered truth. He has the power now. And it's a power he's hungry to use. Zelly! I scream. He stalks toward her. A swarm of animations charge with a vengeance, but he breaks through them, unwavering as they splinter into burning rubble. Zelly tries to rise from the ground and fight, but her wounds are too severe. As she falls back, the burner raises his palms. No! I lunge, throwing myself between his and Zelly's body. A surge of terror and adrenaline races through me as I face the burner's flames. A comet of fire twists in his hands, its heat bends the air. My magic builds in my chest, thrashing into my fingers. The image of my powers restraining Kia's mind returns. I raise my hands to fight. Stop! The burner freezes. Confusion rocks me as he turns to the voice's source. A young girl makes her way across the camp. Thin brows knit in concern. The moonlight illuminates her face, glowing against the puff of white on top of her head. When she reaches us, she stares at the streak of white in my own hair. They're one of us. The comet of fire in the burner's hands goes out. Okay, so take a moment to summarize chapter 50, and when you're done with that summary, continue to chapter 51 in Zelly's perspective. He tried to protect me. In all the questions and confusion, this surprise rises above the rest. It surges when Enon retrieves the sunstone and places it in my hands. It swells when he lifts me in his arms and holds me tight against his chest. Following the young girl with the crown of white hair, Enon carries me past the gate. As we pass, the fighters remove their masks and reveal their white locks. Almost every person behind the gate is a diviner too. What is this? I try to make sense of everything through the haze of pain. The burner, the countless diviners, the child who appears to lead them. But any notion of what this could all mean vanishes when we finally lay eyes on their camp. In the center of the mammoth tree lies a convergence of several valleys. The dip creates a depression in the earth, forming a wide plain filled with bright tents, wagons, and carts. From afar, the sweet scent of fried plantain and jollof rice hits me, somehow rising above the copper tang of my own blood. I catch murmurs of Yoruba in the crowd, filled with the most diviners I've seen since I was a child. We pass a group of diviners laying flowers around a tall lavender vase. A shrine, a tribute to Sky Mother. Who are all these people? Enon asked the young girl they call Zoo. What is it you're doing? Give me a moment, please. I promise I'll return your friends and answer your questions, but I need some time. Zoo whispers to a diviner beside her, a girl with green patterned skirt, matching wrap tied around her white hair. They weren't in the tent, the diviner whispers back. Then find them. The girl's voice is strained. They didn't make it past the gate, so they can't have gotten far. Tell them we have their friends. We know that we're telling the truth. I strain my neck to hear more, but an ache ripples through my core. When I writhe, Enon holds me closer. The sound of his beating heart pulses through my ears, steady and strong, like the crest of the tides. I find myself leaning into the sound. Against my greatest confusion rises. That burner would have killed you, I whisper. Just lying in the Magi's presence seared my skin. It still itches raw and red, a patch on my arm burnt and blistering. As it prickles, it brings me back to the scorching breaths I thought would be my last. For the first time, magic wasn't my ally. It was almost my end. What were you thinking? I ask. You were in danger, he answers. I wasn't. He reaches down and grazes a cut on my chin. A strange flutter travels through me at his touch. Any possible response jumbles in my throat. I don't know what to say to that. Enon still bathes in the glow of the sunstone's touch. With his magic still at the surface, his copper complexion is rich with health. In the lantern's light, his bones are elegantly pronounced instead of a harsh and protruding against his skin. This'll do. Zoo brings us into a tent where a few makeshift cots have been set up. Set her down here. Zoo points to a cot, and Enon lays me down with care. As my head hits the rough cotton, I fight a wave of nausea. We need liquor and bandages for the wounds, Enon says. Zoo shakes her head. I'll take care of it. She presses her palm to the gash in my side, and I cringe. A searing stabs at my insides as she chants. I force my head up. A bright orange light glows beneath Zoo's hands. The pain of her touch transforms into a numbing warmth. The searing inside me cools to a dull ache. The soft light from her hands kneads its way into my skin, spreading throughout every ripped muscle and torn ligament. I let out a long breath as Zoo's magic mends my wounds. Are you all right? I look up. I didn't even realize I was squeezing Enan's hand. My face heats as I let go and run my fingers over where the arrow pierced me. Wet blood still trickles down my skin, but the wound is completely healed. Once again, questions arise. Louder now that they don't have to fight through the haze of my pain. In the past hour, I've seen more different types of magic than I've seen in the past decade. You need to start talking. I study Zoo. The russet hue of her brown skin is strangely familiar, like the fishermen who sailed up to Aloran every 2 moons to exchange their saltwater trout for our cooked tiger fish. What's going on? What is this place? Where are the bone dagger and scroll, and where are our siblings? You said you had my brother. I pause as the tent flap opens. Amari stumbles in with a half-conscious Tizane slung around her arm. I jump to my feet to help her. My brother's so battered he can hardly stand. What have you done? I yell. Amari withdraws the bone dagger and points it at Zoo's neck. Heal him. The girl steps back, palms raised. Set him down. She takes a deep breath. I'll answer all your questions now. We sit in rigid silence, digesting everything as Zulika heals Tizane's leg and head. Behind her, Kwame and Folake stand at attention, stances tense. When Kwame shifts, my hand moves to my leather pack, searching for the heat of the sunstone under its skin. It's still hard to look at him without imposing the memory of flames around his face. I lean against Nayla, relieved to be reunited after Zoo ordered her people to release my rider. I tuck my pack behind her paw to keep it and the sunstone out of sight. But when Zoo's limbs begin to shake from the strain of her incantation, I find myself wanting to pull out the sunstone and lend it to her. Watching Zoo, it's like I'm 5 years old again, trailing after Mama with bandages and pots of heated water. Whenever the village healer couldn't tend to the worst of Abaddon's sick alone, she and Mama would work together. Side by side they sat, the healer using the magic of her touch while Mama kept the patient from taking his last breath. The best reapers don't only command death, little Zell. We also help others live. I stare at Zoo's small hands, remembering the hands of my mother. Though young, Zoo exhibits great skill over her magic. It all begins to make sense when we learn that she was the very first diviner to touch the scroll. I didn't realize what I had, she speaks, voice scratchy from the toll of her magic. Folake hands her a wooden cup of water. Zoo nods in thanks before taking a sip. We weren't ready when Saren's guards descended in Wari and attacked. We barely escaped after they took the scroll away. Enan and Amari stare at each other, a silent conversation playing in their eyes. The guilt that's crept onto Enan's face all day spreads to Amari's. After Wari, I knew we needed a place where we could be safe. A place where the guards couldn't hunt us. It started as only a few tents, but when we sent coded messages to the diviners of Arisha, the camp began to grow. Enan lurches forward. You built this settlement in under a moon? It doesn't feel like it, Zoo shrugs. It's like the gods kept sending diviners this way. Before I knew it was happening, the camp built itself. The ghost of a smile comes back to Zoo's face, but fades when she turns to Amari and Tizane. She swallows hard and looks down, running her hands up and down her arms. The things we did to you. Zoo stops herself. The things I allowed them to do. I'm so sorry. I promise you it made me sick, but when our scouts saw a noble with the scroll, we couldn't take the risk. She squeezes her eyes shut, a thin line of tears breaking through. We couldn't let what happened in Wari happen here. Zoo's tears make my own eyes prickle. Kwame's face pinches with pain. I want to hate him for what he did to Tizane, but I can't. I'm no better. If anything, I'm worse. If Enan hadn't stopped me, I would have stabbed that masked diviner to death just to get answers. He'd be face down in the dirt instead of lying on a cot, being treated as he awaits Zoo's healing. I'm sorry, Kwame forces out, voice low and strained. But I promised these people I would do anything to keep them safe. My mind paints the flames around his face once more, but somehow they aren't as menacing. His magic made my blood run cold, but he fought for his people, our people. Even the gods wouldn't fault him for that. How can I? Zoo palms the tears away from her cheeks. In that moment, she appears so much younger than the world has allowed her to be. Before I can stop myself, I reach out and pull her into my arms. I'm so sorry, she cries into my shoulder. It's okay. I rub her back. You were trying to protect your people. You did what you had to do. I lock eyes with Amari and Tazane, and they nod in agreement. We can't blame her. Not when we would do the exact same thing. Here. Zoo pulls the scroll from the pocket of her black dashiki and presses it into my hands. Whatever you need, everyone here is behind you. They listened to me because I was the first to touch the scroll, but if what Amari said is true, you've been chosen by the gods. Whatever your command, we'll all follow it. Discomfort bristles beneath my skin at the thought. I can't lead these people. I can barely lead myself. Thank you, but you're doing good work here. Just keep these people safe. Our job is to get to Zaria and charter a ship. The solstice is only 5 days away. I have family in Zaria, Falake speaks up. Traders we can trust. If I go with you, I can get you their ship. I'll go too. Zoo grabs my hand, hope tangible in her tiny grasp. There are enough people here for security, and I'm sure you guys could use a healer. If you'll have me, Kwame's voice trails off. He clears his throat and forces himself to meet Tazane's and Amari's eyes. I would like to fight with you. Fire is always a good defense. Tazane fixes Kwame with a cool glare, hand rubbing his wounded thigh. Though Sue stopped his bleeding, she wasn't strong enough to take away all the pain. Protect my sister, or the next time you close your eyes, you'll be the one with a dagger in your leg. I can accept that. Kwame extends a hand. Tazane reaches up and shakes it. A comfortable silence fills the tent as an apology travels between their grips. We have to celebrate. A wide smile erupts on Zoo's face, so bright and innocent it makes her look like the child she should get to be. Her joy is so infectious, even Tazane finds himself with a grin. I've been wanting to do something fun. A way to bring everyone in the camp together. I know it isn't the typical time, but we should hold the Io tomorrow. Ajoyo? I leaned forward, unable to believe my ears. When I was a child, celebrating Sky Mother and the birth of the gods was the best part of the year. Baba would always purchase Mama and me matching kaftans, silk and beaded with long trains that flowed down our backs. And the last Ajoyo, before the raid, Mama saved up all year so she could buy gold-plated rings to braid throughout my hair. It would be perfect. Zoo's voice speeds up at her as her excitement grows. We could clean out tents and hold the opening procession, find a place for the sacred stories. We could build a stage and let each magi touch the scroll. Everyone can watch their powers return. A prickle of hesitation runs through me, burning with the echo of Kwame's flames. Just a day ago, turning all these diviners into magi would have been a dream, but for the first time I pause. More magic means more potential, more wrong hands for the sunstone to fall into. But if I keep a close eye on it, if all these diviners already follow Zoo, what do you think? Zoo asks. I look between her and Kwame. He breaks into a smile. That sounds amazing, I decide. It'll be an Ajoyo people will never forget. What about the ritual? Amari asks. If we leave right after the celebration, we'll have enough time. We still have 5 days to get to Zaria and use Falake's boat, and using Falake's boat will cut our time in half. Zoo's face goes so bright, it's like its own source of light. She squeezes my hand and I'm surprised at the warmth it fills me with. It's more than another ally, it's the start of our community. Then we'll do it. Zoo grabs Amari's hand too, almost jumping up and down. It's the least we can do. and I can think of no better way to honor the four of you. 3, Tizane corrects us. His terseness cuts through my budding excitement. He nods at Enon. He's not with us. Tightness gathers in my chest as Enon and Tizane lock eyes. I knew this moment was coming. I just hoped we'd have more time. Zoo nods stiffly, sensing the tension. We'll let you talk among yourselves. There's a lot we have to do if we're going to be ready for tomorrow. She rises to her feet, and Kwame and Falake follow, leaving us with only silence. I'm forced to stare at the scroll in my hands. What now? Where do we, and are we even a we? I know this will be hard to digest, Enon speaks first. But things changed when you and Amari were taken. I'm aware that it's a lot to ask, but if your sister can learn to trust me... Tizane whips to me, his glower hitting like a staff to the gut. His face says it all. Tell me this isn't true. Tizane, if it weren't for him, I would have been taken too. Because he wanted to kill me himself, when the fighters attacked, he still wanted to drive his sword through my heart. I take a breath and start over, running my hands over my staff. I can't afford to mess this up. I need Tizane to listen to me. I didn't trust him, not at first. But Enon fought by my side. When I was in danger, he threw himself in harm's way. My voice seems to shrink, unable to look at anyone. I stare at my hands. He's seen things, felt things I could never explain to anyone else. How am I supposed to believe that? Tizane crosses his arms. Because, I look back at Enon, he's a magi. What? Amari's jaw drops and she whips toward Enon. Though I've seen her eye the streak in his hair before, now the realization dawns. How is that possible? I don't know, Enon says. It happened sometimes in Lagos, right before you burned our village to the ground, Tizane yells. Enon clenches his jaw tight. I didn't know then. But you knew when you cut Lakin down. He attacked us. My admiral feared for our lives. And when you tried to kill my sister last night, were you a magi then? Tizane tries to rise but grimaces, hands flying to his thighs. Let me help. I start, but Tizane throws off my hand. Tell me you're not this stupid. A different kind of pain flashes behind his eyes. You can't trust him, Zell. Magi or not, he isn't on our side. Tizane, he tried to kill you. Please, Enon speaks up. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I don't want to fight anymore. We all desire the same thing. What's that? Tizane scoffs. A better Orisha. A kingdom where magi like your sister don't have to live in constant fear. I want to make it better. Enon locks his amber eyes with mine. I want to fix it with you. I force myself to look away, afraid of what my face will betray. I turn to Tizane, hoping something in Enon's words moved him, but he's clenching his fist so hard his forearms shake. Tizane, forget it. He rises with a wince and heads for the tent exit, fighting through the pain in his leg. You're always screwing everything up. Why stop now? Okay, so we're going to pause there. So take a moment and summarize chapter 51. So what all has happened with what we discovered about Zoo? What is this encampment? Why did it form? And what has happened between Tizane and Enon? What is going on with them? And how is this impacting Zelly as well on this lack of a relationship with Tizane and Enon here? So take a moment for your notes and then continue on with chapter 52.